There are 3 sections to this project. Section 1 explains why student motivation is important, the differences between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, and how these contribute to student success. Section 2 summarizes the different factors which contribute to student motivation in the classroom, which teachers can focus on in order to improve the motivation levels in their own classrooms. And finally, Section 3 is where I demonstrate how these ideas were synthesized into my classroom and used to contribute to my own students' motivation levels. When students are not motivated, it becomes difficult for them to succeed academically. This is because the motivated student has the inner strength to learn, to discover and capitalize on capabilities, to improve academic performance, and to adapt to the demands of the school context. Therefore, teachers need to be mindful of how they can effectively incorporate motivating factors during the construction of their classroom environment, their lessons, and even their assessment practices. Even with regards to the most unappealing tasks, there are usually a number of ways that students can be motivated to complete them. This topic is incredibly important and yet has received scant attention from the world of research. It is for these reasons that I have chosen to focus on this subject for my capstone project. I would like to note that I am specifically focusing on academic motivation, although I believe that a lot of the ideas presented here would be helpful for dealing with behavioral motivation as well. I would also like to note that even though I approached the problem of introducing these ideas within my own classroom context, which involves grades 3 and 4 students, the core principles presented in this video can be adapted to work with students of all ages. I would first like to look at the 2 types of motivation that are most often referred to in an educational context, and that is the dichotomy of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. The reason that I think this is important is because I notice a bias in educators towards intrinsic motivation that can be misleading. Intrinsic motivation sounds wonderful. Students who are intrinsically motivated engage in an activity because the activity in itself evokes interest or pleasure, or because they identify with reasons for performing an activity. There are clear advantages to students being intrinsically motivated towards completing tasks, as they will need little teacher influence to pursue and enjoy things that they find internal enjoyment in. But of course, if every student was intrinsically motivated, then there would be little reason to research student motivation in the first place. I think that there is an assumption that using extrinsic motivation strategies are somehow bad, when combined with intrinsic motivation, they should be viewed more even-handedly. The hard truth is that most of the things that we have to do in our adult lives are not intrinsically motivated. As an adult, we have developed an internal understanding of why we need to complete these extrinsically motivated tasks, but they are still motivated by an external force nonetheless. Most people who have been placed under pressure know that they can force themselves to do a great deal of undesirable tasks when push comes to shove. And while sometimes we are motivated externally in a forceful manner, this does not mean that we cannot also pursue extrinsic rewards by doing things that we intrinsically enjoy. In a classroom, often students with low levels of motivation will not give activities a chance in order to gauge their potential enjoyment of it. By using external motivators to give them a little push down the proverbial slide, they can come to understand that the process is just as much fun as the reward. Furthermore, sometimes the pursuit of a long-term and extrinsic goal can be in and of itself intrinsically motivating. Working really hard at a job you love in the hopes of your passion being noticed by your boss can be internally rewarding as well. Rather than thinking of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation as separate things, as educators, we should look to find that sweet spot where intrinsic and extrinsic motivation can work in unison. This does not mean that you can't overuse extrinsic motivators. A teacher should be careful not to rely solely on using extrinsic motivation strategies in order to push their students to complete their work. I would make the same claim about intrinsic motivation, but because intrinsic motivation is not issued by an external force, it would be difficult to say that a teacher can overuse it as it comes from within. However, I do think that I have experienced times when a passion project runs out of steam due to a lack of external reward, which could be thought of as an over-reliance on intrinsic motivation. The point is that students do not fit nicely into being motivated one way or another. At times, it will take different strategies to get the most out of them. There are even cultural and family influences which might determine whether a student has a preference towards extrinsic or intrinsic motivational interventions. I think there needs to be a greater focus on the difference between autonomous and controlled motivation, which are two subsets of extrinsic motivation. Autonomous motivation is the kind of motivation that can be beneficial to students, as it allows students to choose whether or not it holds value to them. Allowing them to choose which kinds of rewards make sense to them will result in greater mental health and long-term persistence of goals. So yes, autonomous motivation is extrinsically motivated, but they are pursued because they are in line with the student's own desires. Controlled motivation, on the other hand, is essentially coercing someone into doing something with a fear of a negative consequence. There is little evidence to support using controlled motivation. However, it should be noted that it is what some students may be used to, and they may in fact have a difficult time adjusting to other types. What remains clear, and will be a resounding theme throughout the rest of this video, is that having choice everywhere allows students to align the tasks that they are given in school with their own personal beliefs, values, and desires. One of the biggest challenges that I had during the creation of this project was finding a way to take all of the learning from my research and the rest of the PME program and synthesize it into a practical toolkit of strategies that teachers could use to motivate their students. After carefully examining all of the ideas that I had, I was able to come up with 10 factors which influence a student's motivation. Some of these could be divided even further, but 10 felt like a nice round number that was easily workable for teachers. And the first major motivator for students is the level of self-efficacy that they have. There is a clear link between a student's beliefs about his or her ability to succeed and their overall level of motivation. It's almost like the old adage, the rich get richer. The more self-efficacious students are, the more motivated they are to complete learning tasks, and the more learning tasks they complete, the more self-efficacious they become. As teachers, we not only need to look at students' abilities from an objective point of view, but also from their own subjective point of view. A student might be an excellent reader, but if they don't believe that they are, then they will be less motivated to read. Not only are students with high levels of self-efficacy more motivated, but they will also persist longer through difficult learning tasks, which require patience. Essentially, this means that the things we tell ourselves have a direct impact on our motivational levels. It's necessary then to find that sweet spot where students feel challenged but not overwhelmed, and this target will be different for each student. This is why scaffolding is such an effective strategy for accomplishing this. When activities are deemed too difficult for a student, they will lose motivation. The difficulty should increase gradually to meet their learning needs. While it can be hard to bridge this gap between students, teachers can mitigate this by providing tasks with different levels of challenge. Most students will choose something that is a suitable level of challenge for them. Tying all of this together, as students complete simpler tasks, they gain confidence, which can be applied to the completion of bigger and bigger tasks. This is the path to building self-efficacy, which contributes to motivation. Another motivating factor is a student's ability to self-regulate. Being able to self-regulate one's emotions is a pillar of motivation. Let's face it, not every task that we give students in school is going to be inherently motivating in and of itself. Self-regulation is necessary for students to overcome the wave of emotions that they may feel when presented with less than desirable tasks. And if you wait until a student is already undergoing emotional stress, it's already too late to intervene. It's important to consistently teach these strategies to students so that they have the skills at the ready when the time comes to deal with complex emotions. Students can learn these kinds of techniques through self-reflection and also through watching how their teachers handle stress effectively. It should be acknowledged that this skill is very difficult to measure objectively, and it's not always obvious if a student is regulating themselves both to the teachers and the student in question. If students are not paying mind to the feedback they receive from teachers, they may not be able to gain these self-regulation strategies. A good way to get a window into how well a student can self-regulate might be to give them a task with a degree of difficulty and have them share their thoughts as they undertake it. This helps them reflect, and for certain students who struggle to regulate emotions, sometimes it's more important that they reflect on how they felt during a task rather than the completion of a task in and of itself. This is because even the most knowledgeable student who cannot self-regulate may have a difficult time being motivated to present that knowledge. Next, we will look at the connection between choice, personal learning goals, and motivation. Perhaps the number one motivator of all is the idea of providing students with lots of choice in school. Referring back to the autonomous and controlled goals dichotomy, it makes sense that students do not enjoy being forced into situations that they see no value in. The choices that you provide them should be meaningful and of value to the students, not just surface level choices such as which color they want to use on an assignment. This does not mean having students decide every single thing, as some structure is still needed for them to navigate things and to feel successful. Giving students the freedom to choose their plan towards educational success ensures that they will choose activities that they are intrinsically motivated to do. And the idea of choice can and should apply to allowing students to set learning goals, activities, and even who they work with as much as possible. Goal setting can be a chance for students to dream and feel hopeful about the future, and when done right, it can empower them to chase those dreams. And having students set intermediate goals that build up to their vision will prevent them from feeling like their dream is too big. Students setting their own goals is incredibly powerful, as it requires them to have a full understanding of the steps required to complete them. They become the steers of their own ships in order to get to where they want to be. The next motivator to investigate is the use of higher order thinking skills in classroom activities. We need to provide our students with as many opportunities as possible for them to be creative, think critically, and use their heads in new ways. It might be tempting in an effort to build self-efficacy in certain students to avoid giving them more complex tasks, but they still need to learn those skills. Remember that there are ways to scaffold even those tasks which are incredibly complex in nature. The thing that motivates them about these kinds of exercises is simply the challenge and the novelty of the experience. There are a variety of ways to intrinsically motivate students to simply engage in the process of thought. Having guided discussions can open up new mental pathways and even bring students to new levels of consciousness. Giving students a chance to explore deep themes in their writing can push them to see how deep the rabbit hole actually goes and motivate them to write even more. Too often, students have all the answers to everything in a structured environment, but not all situations in life have these kinds of answers. Many environments are ill-structured and completely dissimilar to the well-structured environment of a typical classroom. Furthermore, by facilitating tasks which allow for deeper and more complicated thoughts to occur, students have a greater chance of connecting the information to their own lives. Now, let's look at how connection to a community can have a major impact on student motivation levels. Students who are connected in the classroom with their peers and their teachers are more likely to be engaged. With that in mind, I would also like to point out that being connected to the community does not mean being connected to the classroom only, but also to the school at large. The key here is to provide students with a sense of belonging. Students need to feel a sense of membership, and you can create this in your classroom. To accomplish this, a big part of your focus needs to be on finding ways to build relationships with students and between students. Telling a personal story can be a great way to take a brain break and build a greater connection with students. Implementing sharing circles to encourage students to share their own stories with their peers can be a great way to build better connection between students. As previously mentioned, providing students with more choices can also be a great way to foster a relationship with them. Perhaps on a research project, for example, they are interested in learning about a topic that is different than the one you had intended. Allowing them a chance to look into that idea will likely motivate them more because it is something that they themselves have chosen and see value in. And it's not only about working to build relationships with individual students. Another piece of the puzzle is encouraging a positive classroom environment so that students do feel comfortable sharing their personal stories and connecting with their peers. When this is not in place, students can be worried and unmotivated to share their feelings and opinions with the class for fear of being ostracized. In fact, when this sense of community is not present, students may be afraid to ask for assistance in general for fear of looking incompetent in front of their peers. Additionally, helping students feel a sense of belonging in your classroom can also increase their motivation because it gives them social resources with which to self-regulate. Having clear expectations and a rationale for the activities that are assigned in class is also a major contributor to student motivation. Having clear expectations is important for the motivation levels of the students in a classroom. Not only should these expectations be known to students, but there needs to be a clear rationale as to why expectations are the way that they are. If there are rules, there should be a reason behind them that makes sense to the students. This sense of rationality should also extend to assignments and tasks that are given to students. And as previously mentioned, providing students with freedom and choices for how the finished products will look within the confines of a clear structure will help students internalize that rationale. Furthermore, reflecting back on the use of goal setting as a positive motivator, students should be able to rationally connect the tasks that they complete to their larger learning goals. The way that the classroom itself is structured should also be rational. If students are expected to sit in a certain space at a certain time, for example, then it should be clear to them why this is expected. Even more importantly than this, classroom management decisions should be tied to clear reasoning that can be explained to students. Simply telling students that they are to do something because I said so will likely cause resentment to build and will not motivate them or gain their respect. Remember that certain students may be used to an unstructured environment, which will make it difficult to transition to one that is more structured. Additionally, they may have competing needs which are preventing them from investing in schoolwork. Understanding where students are coming from will allow you to learn which rational explanations are likely to connect with different students, as there may not always be an explanation that works for every student. The next motivator that I would like to look at is personal and effective assessment. Good, effective feedback is necessary for students to not only improve, but for them to remain engaged in their learning. Formative assessment is so important in this regard. Don't make everything for marks. Give students lots of opportunity to practice and fail before the official assessment period. Students should be provided with timely guidance in order to prepare them for a summative activity. If they feel that they did poorly on a summative activity because they were not adequately prepared for it by their teacher, then they will feel as though they will never work hard enough to be successful. Another key to making students feel a sense of understanding as to how they will be assessed is to let them have stake in the creation of the assessment protocols used. Give students a voice in how they will be assessed. Their own expectations of themselves are just as important as yours, and what they are hoping to achieve from an activity will motivate them more than what their teacher wants. This gives them ownership over their learning and allows them to see how they have improved based on their own intrinsically motivated metric. Assessment that makes sense to a student and their values should tie in with their personal learning goals, as previously mentioned, and there should be a clear rationale behind assessment that students clearly understand before they begin a learning task. Back to the idea of choice being a huge motivator, students should be allotted the freedom to present their knowledge and understanding in a variety of ways. If they can successfully explain their understanding about the effects of World War II using interpretive dance, let them. By making success a more open-ended concept, students can see that they all have a chance to succeed and will likely also produce more unique results. Relating back to self-efficacy, giving lots of opportunity will only build on this and thus increase student motivation. Remember, when students are finally given summative assessment tasks, ensure that it is at a level that they can reasonably achieve. Build it up using scaffolding techniques during the formative assessment phase. There is also some evidence linking a student's background to their motivation in an academic setting. There is a strong correlation between the academic attainment levels of a student's parents and a student's feelings of motivation towards school. While teachers play an undoubtedly important role for their students, their parents have an even greater influence, and this extends all the way to their motivation levels. Students who are reared by academically successful parents are more likely to be predisposed to academic thinking and behavior. Parental support is a big motivator for students and is unfortunately one that may be largely out of our control. However, we can be mindful of it as an obstacle opposing student motivation. Students of high socioeconomic status are more likely to be motivated by positive interactions with a teacher than those of a lower socioeconomic status. This means that for students who come from an impoverished background, they may have more difficulty being motivated by their teachers. A student's background can influence their motivation towards reading and other related literacy skills. This does not mean that these students cannot be motivated, only that it may require a little more effort on the teacher's part. Motivating factor number 9 relates to having engaging lessons for your students. It should be no surprise that having interesting activities in your classroom is crucial to motivating students. Your lessons have to be engaging enough to be more interesting than everything else going on in a student's life. This is a major hurdle to overcome for some students. As often as possible, your lessons need to be of high quality, and its motivating potential should be carefully considered alongside its learning outcomes during the creation process. One strategy to make any lesson a little bit more engaging is by incorporating your students' interest into your lesson planning. Fitting once more into the idea of a clear, logical rationale for learning activities, connecting lessons to the real world can make them more engaging. Technology is another highly effective way to hook students into participating in a lesson that they otherwise wouldn't. It may sound like a daunting task, but having a lot of variety in your activities is very important to keep students engaged. Something completely out of the box is inherently motivating. Students don't just hate worksheets because you've done them a million times before. They hate them because every teacher they've ever had has done them a million times before. And one more time, I would like to reiterate, give students lots of choice. If you can create activities which have lots of opportunities for students to make decisions and make it feel like their own work, they will be intrinsically motivated to participate and even thrive in these activities. The final big motivator for students is the passion and enthusiasm of the teacher. Just as parents are important, so too are teachers in the development of student motivation. At the end of the day, a teacher who brings good energy to the fray can make all the difference for a student's motivation, as it will be picked up by them contagiously. A teacher with more training and experience is likely to be more competent and contribute to the motivation of the students. A teacher who is passionate about their job will put more time into planning learning activities. Taking the time to make lessons engaging and even personal will show students that you care. On that note, the way that the new curriculum is laid out, teachers have a lot of freedom to put their own interests into their lessons, and choosing personal passions will infect the lessons with enthusiasm. Note, I am speaking as a teacher in British Columbia, and perhaps this freedom does not yet extend across all of Canada. A teacher who praises students for good performance will help to boost their self-efficacy, but on the contrary, a teacher who is always critical of the students will decrease their overall motivation. Rather than focus on what students didn't do, focus on the positive aspects of their performance to increase their motivation levels. Giving positive attention to your students will definitely have a significant impact on their motivation levels, and is something that you can implement into your professional situation right away. In section 2 of this video, we have looked at the 10 motivators for student success and the research supporting them. Personally, I noticed some motivational factors that I was already implementing in my classroom effectively, but I also noticed others that have not been given proper attention as of yet. In the third and final section, I am going to discuss how all the learning from the ideas in sections 1 and 2 were used in my classroom. For PME 831, another class in this program that I took concurrently with the Capstone project, I researched the educational framework known as gamification and created a detailed video about it. While the research for this video was done independently of my work for the Capstone project, it undoubtedly had a huge influence on how I decided to implement motivational ideas into my classroom. Therefore, the approach that I took was a gamified approach, and there are two main reasons for this. The first reason is that I learned I was already using many gamification elements in my classroom previously. This is my class banner, and our classroom is known as the Raven's Nest. It's meant to be a symbol that is known to my students, and I often include it on assignments and throughout the classroom. There are 5 teams in my classroom: red, green, blue, yellow, and purple. Students work at tables that are color-coded to match these teams, and they compete to earn Zenny, which is a fictional currency that is similar to the concept of experience points found in video games. The team that has the most points at the end point of a team rotation earns a surprise. The first rotation ended at the end of October, and the winning team won the Halloween surprise. The following year, I realized that students who were not on winning teams felt as if their work was for nothing, so I introduced the Zenny machine. After each rotation, all the team's points are added together as a class, and they can earn a special surprise when the machine fills up to 100,000 Zenny. I also began scaffolding assignments around this time, but in order to prevent more skilled students from taking on easier versions of assignments, I made more difficult assignments worth more Zenny in order to motivate them to work at a suitable skill level. Home reading is an optional program that I decided to introduce in order to give students who wanted to complete schoolwork after hours a chance to earn Zenny. There's also the Feather Books, which was a way for me to reward students for good deeds and behaviors rather than solely focusing on academics. Students would have the cards explaining the behavior necessary to earn each feather, and then they would receive a physical feather to place into their book if they managed to earn it. Last year I took the plunge and had a custom rug made with the Raven's Nest logo and the feather symbols neatly tied together with the team colors in order to make students feel a deeper connection to the classroom. Early on, I also decided that I didn't want students to waste their school supplies or damage them, so I told them that if they lost one of their supply items, they would need to purchase them using their team's Zenny. The first year they could only purchase brand new items from Captain Russ's store. However, as I started collecting more previously used items, I created a second shopkeeper who sold used items for half the price, named Dubious Dan. These characters also appear in a number of reading comprehension work that I give to my students in order to further connect my classroom environment and my assignments together. The last major gamification element are the Behaviorite crystals. These were created in my third year when I was given a class of students where more than half of the students had serious behavior issues. The idea was simple. There are 5 colors of gems to earn that would be physically magnetized to the whiteboard inside of the power circles. If a student was able to collect all 5, then they would get to participate in a game show known as Raven Dice. Basically, once on the game show, they would roll a dice and earn the corresponding prize. In the beginning, the Behaviorite crystals were earned for exhibiting kindergarten-level behaviors, as that's what this aforementioned class needed to work on. I have considered getting rid of the Behaviorite crystals in recent years, as I haven't really needed them, but the students really enjoy it, so I have decided to keep it around. The second reason that I felt that gamification would be a good approach for me is because in my research for that video, I learned that gamification is very motivating for students. One memorable quote stated that the research for gamification so far has been positive when it comes to engagement and motivation. There were 3 new interventions that I used to gamify my classroom and motivate my students. The first intervention was definitely the most effective one, but it took a lot of work. Inspired by the idea of achievements in video games, I decided to create a sticker book where students could try to collect as many of them as they wished. Creating stickers is something that I had thought about before, but it always seemed far too expensive to get stickers custom made. It wasn't until I had the epiphany that label paper could be used to achieve the same effect. I also bought circular punches of 2 different sizes in order to mass produce the stickers quickly, and then I created the stickers to fit inside of those dimensions. Each of the circles explains clearly what the students must do in order to earn each sticker, which allows them to set personal learning goals for themselves and choose which ones they are interested in pursuing. I even made some of them worth Zenny. I am going to quickly explain each family of stickers and the rationale behind them. The first 6 are related to the core competencies. As our school has made big strides in the last couple of years in terms of how we teach the competencies, I wanted to give these a central spot in the book. As a side note, we have tied each of the core competencies to Indigenous legends and characters. Then our school commissioned a local Indigenous artist to create artwork for each of them so that I could put them together and make usable documents and self-assessments for our school to use. Making these into stickers will help students to recognize these characters and the competencies which they represent. The next 18 stickers represent the feathers that I mentioned previously. While it was cool to have physical feathers that students could earn, turning them into stickers has definitely simplified things. The feather books took me a long time to make every year, and the feathers themselves keep going up in price. The next 12 stickers are earned from specific teachers and adults in the building. This encourages students to develop school-wide connections, which is a motivating factor for students, as previously mentioned. The final sticker on this page will be given to students at the end of the year. I haven't decided yet, but I may allow students who end up in my room again next year to continue their progress, and that would allow these stickers to carry over. These stickers are given to students depending on which team they end up in for each of the 5 rotations throughout the year. I included these because I noticed one student in my class was using the colored electrical tape that I used to indicate team tables in order to keep track of which teams she had been on throughout the year. I thought it was a great idea. These next 16 stickers can be earned by achieving measurable learning goals. This includes reading, writing, math, and PE, and some of these challenges will really push high achievers. These next 6 stickers are earned when students participate in various school-wide activities during the year. These include the Remembrance Day Assembly, our Western Day Line Dance, and our Readers Theater plays. These 5 big stickers in the middle are for big achievements relating to the classroom environment. These are earned when a team can earn 10,000 Zenny, or maybe by completing the entire home reading book. These next 8 stickers can only be earned randomly from our class vending machine. I will talk about this a little more as it's the 3rd intervention that I introduced into my class this year. These final 5 stickers are gained from winning one of the signature learning games that I've created and play in my class all the time. All in all, the sticker books have definitely been a huge success in my room this year. As there are so many different ways that students can track and feel their success, the buy-in from them has been very noticeable. The second intervention that I implemented is related to the sticker book, but it serves a different purpose. I gave each of my students what I have referred to as an avatar. This graphical representation of the player is another element common in video games. Each of them colored them however they saw fit. And the idea here is that their avatar would start off looking a certain way, but as the year progresses, they could earn different clothing and parts to add to their avatars. These could be collected from within the vending machine and stuck onto their avatar in a manner similar to the stickers. My thoughts behind this that were the avatars could change as the students themselves changed and learned. I feel that this intervention has been more of a slow burn for my students, but as more and more have collected different body parts to attach, more students have been interested in collecting them. The third and final intervention that I put into place was the aforementioned vending machine. This was introduced in order to deal with a problem that I identified during the inception phase of my project. I have a class this year that has students who are working above grade level and students who are working below grade level with almost nothing in between. Therefore, I needed to scaffold my activities to be accessible to the below grade level group while also ensuring that my high achievers wouldn't be bored. What I started doing was setting aside a bin of extra work for students who had completed the primary task to work on. But I knew that I would need a novel reward that would be different from others already present in the classroom in order for them to be motivated by it. These are Vendo tokens. Every time a student completes a piece of extra work, I pay them with one of these special tokens. I will explain how they can be used shortly. I also decided that I would get my stronger students to work with those working below grade level, and to accomplish this, I created these job application forms. In order to get the job, students needed to write a rationale for why they would be a good fit for the job and provide me with 2 teacher references as well. I reasoned out that students who are willing to fill out the form and get the references would be more likely to perform the jobs consistently. One of these jobs was for a reading coach. As I have many readers in grade 3 and 4 who are only reading at a grade 1 level, the students who I have employed sit with these students and work with them to build their vocabulary. The chart that I have shown here is actually a code I created for a student years ago to help them differentiate between different vowel sounds, as I noticed that the student in question had no problems with the consonants as they consistently make the same sound. I place the picture then of each sound above the vowels of each of the words I want them to learn in order to assist them, and then I test them without the pictures to see if they have committed them to memory. Getting back to the Vendo tokens, I created a new mascot to represent the various things that could be purchased with the coins. Originally, I had planned to make the coins exclusively to be used for the vending machine, but at the last minute, I decided to give students a choice of a bunch of different rewards, as I remembered that choice is a major motivator for students. This ended up being a great decision, as each student in my class has been shown to have different preferences for how they wish to spend their tokens. Finally, I can talk about the vending machine itself. I actually put in the time to see if I could design and 3D print a working vending machine on my own. This was something completely out of my normal skill set, but I knew that if I was successful at it, it would open the door for me to complete other similar projects. In a 3D modeling program, I took the vision that I had in my head and created a total of 13 different parts that would be necessary to make the machine work. It was even supposed to work only when the correct coin was inserted into it, so that way students couldn't just use the vending machine with their loose change. I was successful in printing the first part of the machine, which was necessary for carrying the vending machine capsules from the hopper to the ramp that would spit it out of the machine. However, after that part was done, my printer experienced a malfunction that I was unable to diagnose. This was incredibly frustrating, as I knew that I would either have to abandon my idea altogether or think of an alternative solution. Luckily, I knew someone who could help me. As my father is a master craftsman who can build anything he sets his mind to, I went to him for some help in constructing something similar to my original vision. He actually took my design and in many ways made it even simpler. It took us a full day to build the thing, but the end result was magnificent and worked well. The students definitely enjoy the tactility of being able to turn the crank themselves to receive their prize, and it has helped to make the unstructured time in my classroom more productive. Someday I might try to reprint my original design, but I think that this father-son creation has its own charm as well. As a bonus, I just wanted to show you another small thing that I've done that my students have really enjoyed. I found these scratch ticket stickers that allows one to create custom scratch tickets that work just like the real things. They are very inexpensive and intuitive to use. I gave these to my students at Halloween time to give each of their teams one more chance to gain the most Zenny and win the Halloween surprise. All of the kids in my class have definitely enjoyed all these new ideas, and it has been really helpful in motivating students who have such wide-ranging academic ability and skill levels. And that brings me to the end of my student motivation journey. I hope that you found some of this information useful for your own teaching practice and have been able to reflect and discover actionable ways that you might be able to introduce these ideas to your own students. It's been a long road for me, but my students will reap the rewards for years to come.
It's a long road when you're on your own, and it hurts when they tear your dreams apart. And every new town just seems to bring you down, trying to find peace of mind and break your heart. It's so real, right outside your front door. I tell ya, out where they'll kill ya, you could use a friend. Where the road ends, that's the place for me, where I'm me in my own space.
Exactly where you always need to be with you. I always seem to disbelieve the things I see.